Breezing through this Freaky Friday edition. I've been telling you all week that we were going to have a whopper of a guest to end the week, and he's with us right now. Good friend of mine, and Frank, author, political strategist, and most recently, politically persecuted person. Good friend Roger Stone joins us right now. Hey, Roger, how are you?
John, great to be with you. Great to be with you, Frank.
Hello there, Roger.
Frankie's with us also. We got a lot to talk to you about. Our audience knows that for a long time now, Frank and I have been staunch supporters of yours. We've tried to at least spread the word about the craziness that's come upon your life. But can't stop being puzzled, Roger. My first question is, how has Steve Bannon got away this long with saying one thing and another, both under oath? He had to lie to either the Congress or to the court. What do you say?
Well, first of all, much like General Flynn, I'm going to be unmasked.
All right, perfect.
Secondarily, it's great to be with you guys because, as you know, for 16 solid months, I have been under what I believe to be an unconstitutional gag order. I haven't been able to say everything I'd like to say. I haven't been able to defend myself. I haven't been able to correct the tsunami of disinformation coming from people like Ari Melber and Rachel Maddow and Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo and so many other of my good friends. So any forum like this one where I have an opportunity to speak and lay it out for people is really valuable. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
We're always here for you.
I testified for 4.5 hours to the House Intelligence Committee. I did so voluntarily. I would argue that any inadvertent misstatements I made to that body were immaterial. They weren't masking any underlying crime. There was no intent to mislead the committee. The committee, by the way, agreed with that. But that testimony, like Steve Bannon's testimony, was classified, and it was a secret. Last week, the House Intelligence Committee, under remorseless prodding by Rick Grinnell, then the acting director of information, DNI, finally released those transcripts. And when you take Steve Bannon's transcript before the committee and you compare it to his transcript at my trial, it becomes absolutely clear that Steve either lied under oath in front of the House Intelligence Committee or he lied under oath at my trial. Now, knowing the facts, I can tell you he told the truth to the committee. He lied at my trial by saying that he and I repeatedly discussed WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, that he, quote, considered me the access point for the campaign to WikiLeaks, which would certainly be news to me. Whereas he told the committee correctly, he and I never discussed WikiLeaks at any point whatsoever. That was the truth. The very few conversations I had with Steve Bannon in 2016, and I didn't speak to him often because he was usually trying to avoid more experienced political advice, regarding getting the female victims, the woman victims of Bill Clinton, to speak out. Because, as you know, Bill Clinton, as I detailed in my book, The Clintons' War on Women, had sexually assaulted and raped numerous women. But this was relevant to 2016 because of Hillary's role in intimidating them and silencing them and bullying them. It was Hillary who ran the war room, who hired the heavy-handed private detectives and the nasty lawyers to muzzle these women, to silence them, lest they destroy Bill's political career. So that book was a bestseller. It's probably the reason that I am, on the hook right now. I'm finally able to say, for the first time since the beginning, I am the victim of a witch hunt. I'm the victim of a political prosecution. The Office of Special Counsel leaked for almost 16 months. Roger Stone would be indicted for treason. Roger Stone will be indicted for conspiracy against the United States. Roger Stone will be indicted for violation of the foreign campaign contribution ban. Roger Stone will be indicted for money laundering. Roger Stone will be indicted for mail fraud, wire fraud, cyber crimes, including unauthorized access to a protected computer, cyber crimes, including the receipt and dissemination of stolen material, the murder of Abraham Lincoln, This list went on and on and on. They defrauded several federal judges and magistrates, claiming they had evidence of these some 18 crimes, aiding and abetting a felony, accessory to a felony after the fact. They never had any evidence of any of those crimes, despite the legal proctological examination that they conducted on me, going through every email, every text message, every phone call. All they could come up with was a very poorly put together, flimsy, lied to Congress charge, when the matters that I'm accused of making misstatements about are both immaterial and they have no intent. In other words, there's no underlying crime for me to lie about. And as you know, Frank, someone very well known to you, their chief witness was Randy Credico, hardly a credible individual.
To me, that's outrageous in and of itself. Roger, speaking of crimes, though, the president tweeted about you on Wednesday, I believe. He obviously talked about how he perceives you were railroaded, but he also went out of his way to point out Joe Scarborough and the intern, 28-year-old intern that died in his congressional office years ago. It's not the first time that he's brought that up. I'm sure you appreciate the president's support for your case and for setting the record straight. But is the president out of line by bringing up that case without any evidence whatsoever that Joe Scarborough did anything wrong?
I don't think so. First of all, I remember the days when Joe Scarborough would hang out at Mar-a-Lago, sunning himself by the pool, eating and drinking lavishly on Donald's tab. I remember the days when Minka would playfully pat Donald on the hair before the cameras were turned on. Joe's real anger stems from the fact that he honestly believes, I'm glad you're both sitting down, that he should have been selected for vice president on the Trump ticket, and that he was passed over. People who worked for him at the time told me this, people I find extremely credible, and his anger at Trump stems from that. Now, as far as the case against Joe Scarborough regarding this intern, there's as much evidence that he's responsible for her death as there is that I am responsible for treason today. But we don't know whether there's been a full investigation. In my case, everything was investigated, and there is no treason. There is no conspiracy against the United States. There is no greater crime. This appears to me to be an uninvestigated crime. There's now questions about the coroner in this case. I'd certainly like to know more. Given the viciousness and the personal nature of the attacks that Joe and his wife have leveled at the president, Trump is a counterpuncher. You hit the guy with a heavy blow, you better expect to get hit back twice as hard. I would suggest your viewers look very carefully at the look in Minka's eye when she discusses Donald Trump. It is a look of unadulterated hatred. It is demonic. There's something sick about it, in my opinion. Yeah. I've taken my own hits from both of them. The good news, as we know, is it's MSNBC and nobody's watching.
Yeah, for the most part, it's their own little band of merry men.
Well, there are more people watching this right now than watching their show.
Well, I bet you're right, Roger. How are you holding up personally? I see you always firing out there and everything. I know you're in fantastic shape and stuff, but you are, I've heard you say this before, you're potentially facing a life sentence if they put you in jail under Corona. How are you holding up mentally?
Well, it's very difficult, John, because I think it's a death sentence. I mean, I'm 67 years old. Yes, I'm in good physical shape, but I've had some history of respiratory problems and the normal ailments that someone my age has. But the prison they want to send me to, which I'm not allowed to mention, is a hotbed of COVID virus. I see people like Michael Cohen and Michael Avenatti getting out of prison. My wife is worried sick that this miscarriage of justice is going to continue. But I tell you the truth, I've been very forthright about this. I've been able to stay strong because I reaffirm my commitment to God, I reaffirm my commitment to Jesus Christ. I know this isn't a religious broadcast. I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm just telling you the stone cold truth. I
Yeah.
had an opportunity to meet with Reverend Franklin Graham to seek his support. And he gave me really, really good advice. He said, son, I understand the turmoil in your life. I understand that you're worried and you're under stress and you're pressured. If you will just turn your life over to Christ, if you will confess your sins and walk in his way, there will be an enormous burden taken off of you because God will never leave you and he will always protect you.
All right, Roger. We're going to take
And I
a
thought
quick.
about
We're going to
that.
take a. We're going to take a quick break, and then Roger's going to stick with us. We're going to do another segment. We're going to come back and talk about just that. How are Avenatti and Cohen out of jail, and these morons are still trying to put Roger in jail? More Liquid Lunch right after this. All right, welcome back. Let's get right into it. Exclusive interview with Roger Stone. Roger joins us again. Frank Morano is also with us. Roger, I have different insights into this personally from different angles. I'm a friend of Patrick Byrne's. I'm a friend of yours. I've been following this stuff for the show. And I think there's a blockbuster story in here that we're looking at this Flynn case so close. Was there the same type of FBI misconduct in your case as well?
Well, first of all, it's important to recognize that the judge in my case specifically barred me or my lawyers from raising the question of misconduct by the special counsel's office, the FBI, the Justice Department, or any member of Congress, Adam Schiff. So I wasn't allowed to raise any of this, but there were not one, but two incidents in which the FBI sent to me someone who was an undercover informant in an attempt to entrap me. The first time was in May of 2016, around the same time that FBI informants were approaching Carter Page and George Papadopoulos. A man whose name he said was Henry Greenberg reached out to me and he told me he had valuable information on Hillary Clinton that he thought would be of great value to the Trump campaign. So I agreed to meet him in South Florida. I learned only when I arrived that he was an ethnic Russian. He told me he had this terrific blockbuster information on Hillary. And I said, well, before I could examine it, I couldn't tell you whether it was of any value whatsoever. And he said, well, that's going to cost you $2 million. And I laughed and I said, well, first of all, I don't have $2 million. Second of all, if I did have $2 million, that's not how I would spend it. He said, no, you don't get it. It's not your $2 million I want. It's Donald Trump's $2 million. And I said, well, you don't get it. Donald Trump isn't spending $2 million on opposition research. So I guess this meeting is over. Only later did I learn that this gentleman's real name was not Henry Greenberg. His real name was Vasilovich Bastetsov, and that he was only in the country on an FBI informant's warrant. It was a warrant that had been extended 9 times, signed off on by the FBI office of the Miami office of the FBI, and that he had been working for them. Fortunately, I had turned him down flat, and this matter actually, I had forgotten all about it when I testified for the House Intelligence Committee. I sent a letter to the committee informing them of this meeting in which nothing illegal happened, and nothing illegal happened as a result of the meeting. And only later would I find out that he was an active FBI informant. He was only in the country on an informant's visa because he had been convicted of a violent gun crime in Russia. And therefore, he could only be in the country at the sufferance of the government.
And Roger, there was an argument, a Brady argument in the Maria Butina case, where Patrick Byrne came out and said that he was an informant and he had told the FBI that he didn't think Maria Butina was an agent. And I guess apparently you believe that he was an informant sent to get information on you as well.
Well, he contacted me in October of 17th of 2018, pardon me, of 2017, and invited me out to Utah, speak to a small dinner out there. I must tell you, I liked him enormously. He's a terrific guy. I actually saw him as someone who should run for public office. We had a lot of commonality in our libertarian views. He's a great champion of medicinal marijuana, which 38 states now, I believe, have legalized. But after dinner, he grilled me pretty aggressively about WikiLeaks and the Russians and what really happened. I didn't think much of it at that time. And then again in April of 2018, he invited me to lunch, but he insisted that lunch be in his suite at his hotel. And kind of the same routine. We had a general political discussion, but once again, he questioned me pretty aggressively, friendly, but aggressively about the Russians and WikiLeaks and so on. Still didn't think much of it. Of course, there was no information to say. I knew nothing more than I've said publicly. Then he subsequently went public, as you know. I think Sarah Carter broke this story, that he was an FBI informant, that he was working for the FBI. He contacted me, was very apologetic. He knew that I'd done nothing wrong. But he was indeed the FBI handler, shall we say, for Maria Butina. So in my view, Comey's FBI tried twice to set me up, the same way they tried to set up General Flynn. It's interesting that in the Mueller report, Mueller airbrushes this entirely in one paragraph, saying that a man named Henry Ochinsky, which is a name I'd never heard before, but I later learned was the criminal alias, one of several aliases for this gentleman, Vasilovich Vostetsov, approached Roger Stone to try to sell him material, but we were unable to confirm that he was an agent of the Russian government. They didn't even mention that he was an FBI informant. Just another example of the handiworks of Andrew Weissman.
Anything you read that the government disclosed that Patrick Byrne was working on their behalf when he was grilling you? Anything exculpatory? Any Brady information that you think should have been included and wasn't?
Unfortunately, I can't comment because all of the records in my case are under a protective seal, and therefore I'm prohibited from discussing them whatsoever. So I'm sorry, I can't respond to your question. But I believe that the FBI tried twice to entrap me. Let's leave it at that. I have never disclosed the Patrick Byrne matter publicly before this show, mainly because I liked him so much. And I actually felt badly for him because I think he was being cross-pressured. Evidently, he'd been very helpful to the FBI many years ago in exposing an insider trading scheme. And therefore, they had confidence in him. He's a highly capable individual. I'm sorry that this incident probably destroyed any chance of him seeking public office, because I do think he'd be excellent from the point of view as an experienced business person, an experienced executive. But at the time he reached me, I think he was working for them.
Wow.
And I think he was doing so in good faith. And it was only later that he figured out there was no Russian collusion.
Well, Roger, a lot of people think the FBI and law enforcement in general tend to be the good guys. So you can't blame Patrick for starting out under that impression, thinking he was helping the good guys. Roger, before we run out of time, I saw Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz say he thinks the president's going to pardon you. Certainly the president, I wouldn't think, would be putting out these supportive tweets if that wasn't at least something he was thinking about. Have you gotten any indication from the president or anybody close to the president that a pardon could be forthcoming?
No, Frank, I can honestly say, other than Matt Gaetz, who I have a great friendship with and who I have a high regard for, I have no formal indications of a pardon. I haven't been promised one or assured one. I cannot assume one. And therefore, I have to continue to be prepared to appeal. I filed a notice of appeal. As you know, there was some very egregious misconduct by the jury forewoman. She got caught red-handed posting anti-Roger Stone posts, not just anti-Trump posts, but attacking me by name on Twitter and Facebook in 2019, and then says with a straight face that she has no bias against me.
All right, we got to leave it there, Roger. Thank you so much. You're the bomb. And go to StoneDefenseFund.com. Stay right there for more Liquid Lunch right after this.